Hello once again, people who most likely also make bass music. I am Annihilate, and today we will be looking at Frozen Ritual, the second of many track breakdowns. This track is the intro song of my debut album, featuring both cinematic stuff and a heavy dubstep rock. Let's get into the intro. The first thing that you will hear in the intro of this song are these string basses. These are default contact strings, and the main thing that's making them sound interesting is this patcher preset. Without it, it would sound like this. This is just something that I've made that's automating the balance, and this mellow, harsh thing is an EQ that's doing this. That helps to make it sound more alive. The second thing that comes in are these choirs, which do a similar thing with the balance. It makes them rise. These are default contact choirs as well. For the processing of it, it has that balance automation. It has some reverb, just a little bit of making this sound slightly less stereo. Some EQing, some compression, more EQing, and more compressing. After the first string swell in, there is this little thing, which just helps to fill out the space. This is some sample that I've had saved for years, I think, and I don't even remember what it's originally from. Then we have some background drain. That moves with the string swelling. After the final string swell of this section, we have this choir. And layered with it is this thunder sample. Going into the next section, let's look at the other stuff that's added to this area before we go into the vocals. First, we've got these violins. They do a very similar swelling thing, which pretty much every instrument does in this. Then we have some more strings that are also swelling. The rain from before continues, and we add in this background noise. There are also these breath samples that go along with the vocal. Moving on to the vocals, the main ones are these. There's a lot of processing going on for this. First, we'll start off with the exciter, which is just doing some distortion. We have some reverb, EQing, and then nectar, which is doing some formant shifting, more EQing, compression, harmony, a bit of reverb, a lot of delay, and then the esser. Pancake turns on whenever the vocal is playing on its own without the delay. And that just pans it back and forth. There's some more EQing, and then final compression. These vocals right here are in the background along with the strings and everything else. For processing, we have this filter and chorus. This filter isn't doing anything as an actual filter, but it's being used to give it that quarter note pattern. Without it, it would sound like this. This balance, automation, EQing, reverb, a good amount of stereo widening and panning it to the side, OTT, more EQing, and some final compression. In the background, we have a pad version of it that sounds like this. It's running through a convolver, more pancake just to pan it around, some EQing, OTT, stereo widening, more EQing, and some compression. I forgot to mention this thing, which is a tear-out gun in the drop, just with a ton of processing on it that makes it sound totally different. It's got a bunch of EQing on it, but primarily it's this delay and the formant filtering. Altogether, this intro part sounds like this. into this build section here, we have some impacts. And this timpani, as well as this sword sound. Starting from the top down for this build, we have these claps. They layer with some of the other drums. We have crashes. There's this perk loop in the final part of it. Then there are the main build drums, which sound like this. The main part of it are these. They're running through some EQing. Some reverb, some OTT, some more EQing, and finally a lot of compression. They are then layered with this high layer. This thing is running through some EQing, reverb, and then some compression and soft clipping. This is also panning around just to give it some extra movement. Altogether, these drums sound like this. Moving on to the effect, we have some downshifters, some risers, and those sword samples, followed by a bunch of impacts, and those timpanis from before. Most of the stuff from before is still here, except for the choirs, which have been replaced, but we still have these strings. Just now without as much swelling. The choirs from before have been replaced by these choirs. Now, what's making it have that, I guess, angelic sound is the formant filter. I'll describe this with an EQ. Basically, what it's doing is taking a notch and moving it around. The same strings from before are still here, but we now have these ones to join them. There's also this brass swelling, and still some of the thunder samples. Altogether, it sounds like this. Going into this brief part before the drop, we have this crash. The drums from before hit once, and then they rise up. We have an impact. This delay instance from the choir. This heartbeat, and then this sword sample. Finally, this campfire. Wind. And breath. For the drop, let's start off with the drums. The drum pattern in this song is very different from something that I'd usually do. And it starts off with having the kick and the snare alternating with one hitting every bar. Halfway through the drop, it goes into bass house with it going into a bass house drum pattern. Here's the kick, the snare. The snare is layering with the kick to sound like this. There are rides and these hats. Here are the crashes. And there is glass breaking on every kick, just to give it more impact. There is also this tom fill. In the bass house section of the drop, the drums swap up pattern, with the kick and the snare sounding like this. And the rest of the drums change to be much more energetic. On top of that, there is also this shaker. There is also this snare fill going into the bass house part. All of the drums together sound like this. Going into the other drop elements, we have this choir, as well as these strings. The main drop pattern alternates between having the stuff like these choirs and strings, to then going into stuff like this. These are a bunch of strings stacked together. And this is some random sample. There is also this string swell. There's also these two screams and this crowd noise that are layering over the main bass. We also have this metal vocal. Yeah! And this one. Yeah! There is also this vocal going into the bass house. Before we go over the basses, there are also these downshifters. This sword sample. And then these risers. To start the main bass stack, we have this sub. And the main bass itself is this. I may have went over this in a previous video, but you can pause it and look at all the stuff if you want. There is this sustain bass, which you can get in my preset pack. The reverb of it is also made mono to go along with those strings from earlier. It's layered with this bass, which hopefully you'll be able to get in a coming preset pack. As well as this one, which you'll also be able to get. One of the two main fill basses, which is layered where those strings are, is this. Here it is if you want to pause it. The primary thing that's making it sound like this, though, is this formant filter, which is moving around to give it its movement. Without it, it would sound like this. The other filler bass is this tear out gun from a previous project, which is layering with this convolver layer. Finally, it is layered with this. You can get this bass as well in my preset pack that I've already given away, but here it is if you're wanting to look at it. Going into the bass house section, most of the stuff stays the same, but we add a few new things, such as this vocal. This vocal is added to layer where those filler basses are. And this bass comes in to the final part of the drop. All of the main basses keep their same pattern as before, but this filler bass ends up replacing this one. And in the second half of it, this formant filter from before ends up on it. Altogether, the drop sounds like this. Alright, that's the end of this breakdown. Hopefully there's more of them on the way. If you liked it, please do something for me way better than pressing the like or subscribe button. You can still do that, but also if you'd stream my album Frostheart, that would mean a lot. Alright, I'll see you in the next one of these.